Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first time a contribution workshop. So today we're basically going to be covering what it is to contribute and how. So why contribute, the benefits of contributing, the kinds of contribution that we have, and basically how to start doing that. There's an overview of the issue queue, which is where we find most of the items to contribute on. Then there's tooling and documentation, which is how to find the right tools and the documentation around those tools. And then we'll have a demo of how to patch an issue. So why to contribute? There's lots of reasons, really. If you use Drupal, if you use Drupal modules every day, somebody has contributed to that. And if you find an issue with a module that you use and you need it fixed, then maybe you contribute to fixing that issue. And that will carry on the process, and everyone basically feeds from that. Everyone gets value out of that. And your contributions are valued by other people. So if you have some particularly good insight to share, then it's valuable for other people. Also, it makes you a part of the community. So when you are contributing to Drupal, you are going to be talking to other people, other experts, and really kind of getting to know other people in the Drupal community and being known. And it's very good to have these sorts of relationships. It makes you feel good to contribute because, you put some stuff out there and somebody's like, oh yeah, great job, thanks, that's so handy. I've been, I've had times where I've put up an issue that fixed an issue that's been an issue for 2-3 years, and it's been bugging a lot of people, and it's really good to see that. And yeah, every contribution that we make makes Drupal that little bit better, that bit more refined. Again, you get kind of some street cred if people are contributing a lot, they'll get known. So that's never bad. And also you learn more about the inner workings of Drupal and Symfony and whatever. So just give me a second. So I was just getting my coffee. So yeah, one of the big things to bear in mind is that you don't need to be a developer. You don't need to write a patch to contribute. So there's a ton of ways in which you can contribute without ever loading the code base onto your machine, without being involved in development at all. Development is a big part of it, obviously, but it's not the be-all, end-all. So the types of contributions that we can have, it can be documentation guides. So that could be even documentation on, in a blog post, even. Translation. So there's tons of different areas that need translations. There's a whole translation effort and an area where you can find what translations need to get done. Sharing knowledge. So just like what I'm doing right now, just sharing some knowledge, that's contribution. Then there's writing themes and modules and coding the bits that are used within Drupal, and promoting the platform. So being an ambassador, being going around and talking about, oh, Drupal's great for this many things, you can use it this way and that, and that it will help because you're bringing in more people to use the platform, and hence more people contributing and so on. And then there's the issue queue, which is where you go and find issues that related to other modules, to the core, to whatever. and fixing issues that are in the issue queue. So there's stuff, so basically one of the first things that we ask contributors to do is to have a Drupal.org account. If they don't have a Drupal.org account, they're not going to be able to do most or pretty much anything. Yes, you could talk about things, but you can't really get involved in the system. So having a Drupal.org account, you could improve documentation. So that is, there's core documentation and there's contrib documentation on the website. There's translation on localized.drupal.org. And then there's also being a member of the Drupal Association, which has, a monetary contribution, which helps the association keep things rolling. And then there's also other ways to contribute with different modules. There's Open Collective and Patreon, which allow for support of specific modules. Sharing module knowledge, as I already talked about. Issue triage is, the issue queue is where you go for a lot of more in-depth kind of specific issues that need to get fixed. And issue triage for finding issues that maybe, oh, is that still an issue? Yeah, okay, it's still an issue, going through it. And then testing issues, so checking if an issue that somebody else has put a patch up to is still an issue. And these are sorts of things that are great for first-time contributors, because it's not a huge burden to do in one day, to go in and take a few issues. You could just do it in half an hour, go and check an issue. Is it still an issue with this fix? No? Okay, great, move on. There's experimental features that need testing, and also feedback about changes. So generating screenshots on different screen sizes and things like that. Marketing materials is another one. There's many different kinds of design efforts that need doing. I'm not probably the best one to speak about marketing materials. My design skills aren't very good, but yes, there's people who definitely need help with design. So this is a little diagram to kind of help you figure out where you might want to contribute. So if you know how to write code, PHP, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, all that stuff, and you want to do contribution with code, then you would go down this route. If you don't, then you could go down this route. So maybe you want to do inline documentation fixes, which actually are documentation within the code, but is not really code-based. But then slightly less technical, there is the issue queue sort of triage and things like that I mentioned before. And then there's these elements here, which are more like writing translation and promotion of the platform and things like that. So have a look at this, and you can probably take a screenshot or something. I think it's up somewhere. I'll have to find where the link is. But basically, if you know that you want to be involved in this kind of side of things, which is not requiring a code base on your machine, then you don't need to worry about the tools. So the tools section of this talk is basically aimed at those who want to write code and push out patches using the existing code base. So if I talk about the tools, and this happens at pretty much every conference, you'll sometimes see people trying to install the tools and following along, and then they get stuck by some issue. And I say to them, like, what are you trying to do? And they're, oh, I just want to see, I just want to do some documentation fixes. And yeah, you don't need the tools for that. So there's a lot that you can do without downloading the tools. And when I'm talking about the tools, I don't want you to get overly focused on that and be like, oh, I need to start doing that now. So that's why I made this diagram, basically, to show there's a lot of stuff outside of the tools. Okay, so documentation is a very, very big part of Drupal. Obviously, you probably look at documentation every single day that you're working on Drupal. And there's probably a lot more documentation than you're aware of. There's a lot more than I'm aware of. Even the other day, I was like, oh, I didn't know that existed. So there's official guides, which are very structured, very well thought out guides that are part of, let's just say the only way that they can be changed is if you actually push up an issue and create a patch to change that documentation. They're pretty static. They're not being changed all the time by anyone. And then there's the community guides, which are a bit more flexible. You can go in and you can actually post edits to those community guides. And they will tend to have maybe a bit more movement on them. The other day I just went and made the suggestion of a code change in one of the theme guides there. And it's literally just going in and editing it. And then if somebody doesn't like your edit, they can change it. So these are two different areas of documentation that exist on the site. As I said, you can go to the documentation by going to drupal.org/drupalorg/docs, and you'll find lots of different areas of documentation, and there may be areas that need working on. You might have seen a mistake in something, or maybe just something that wasn't particularly clear, and that might be something that you go, okay, that's something I can work on. And that's something I feel like I'm good at writing and expressing myself, and it's definitely important to keep the documentation up to date. There's changes to things, and documentation has to stay in line with those. As I said, the official documentation, you need to actually create a patch. So what happens is that you create an issue in the issue queue, and you upload the ASCII doc source file. So it's not the same as the code patches, but it's still an issue that has to go through the issue queue. Whereas the community documentation, as you can see, there's an edit button, and you literally click on that and you can edit the content. And obviously, you be careful what you're editing. You can't just go in and you have to. Your account has to be approved. Sorry, I have to say that. So if you've just created an account, it might not be approved yet, and you might have to ask somebody. So you can't just log in and 5 minutes later start messing around and deleting stuff. But yeah, basically that documentation is very easy to change. So therefore, it's even a less of a hurdle if you see something that needs clearing up to add that in. Doesn't take much. So now we go on to the issue queue, which I keep talking about because it's where most of the contribution revolves around. Sorry, how do I go back? Yeah. So in the issue queue, you would create an issue. So you report on an issue that you found. You say, I've seen an issue in specific section of core or a module or whatever. This version, blah, blah, blah. This is the issue I see. And there's actually templates for what sort of information is good to put in to cover all the information that may be needed. I'm guessing most of you work at some sort of place where you have an issue tracking system, maybe Jira or something like that. And it's very similar, where you put in the reason for the issue and what environment, etc. You also would update issues in the issue queue. So that is going in and saying, this issue actually is also an issue in this latest version, or this issue only happens on certain browsers actually because I've tested it. And on this browser it doesn't work, and this browser it does work. Triage, again, which is just going and checking. We did some triage yesterday to check for some novice issues, to find some issues for first-time contributors. And sometimes you find an issue that was an issue and it no longer is an issue. And maybe somebody's updated it, but they've not updated it correctly or something like that. Patches. So patches are basically a change in code described in a text file. So, change line 53 from this to this. That's basically what it is. And those are used to apply code changes within the issue queue. Although now, pardon me, there is another way of changing the code using forking with merge requests, but we're not going to go into that in first time contribution, but there is another method, and I will point it out. Also providing feedback. So, say, oh, thanks, this is actually really handy that this issue is being fixed here. And testing. So, going in and saying, I've tested this and this works. So the issue queue it's a view, and it lists all of the issues. You can see there's tons of different filters. This is with the advanced filters enabled. And I can probably go into the issue queue if you give me a sec. I'm going to change my screen. So if you see down here, there's actually a URL that says bit.ly.com/Drupal-novice. This is a shortened URL to get to the novice issue queue. That is the issue queue with the tag of novice on it. That's all. You can get to the issue queue the normal way by going to project/issues/Drupal. And this is just a shortcut to that. So within the issue queue, and I've got it up on my screen. I don't know if I can have my screen switched. And if we take a look at one of the issues, for example, this one has been around for 4 years and 7 months. So that's been around for a long time. Yeah. This issue is tagged as novice, Europe 2020. That's another thing. We'll probably be asking you to also search for Europe 2020 as the tag, because we found certain things that are specifically good for this event. And so you'll see that there's a description of the issue, how to reproduce the issue. And here, what these are is different files that have been uploaded. So you have patches, and I'll show you what a patch looks like. So as I said, you've got lines coming in and out. So this is going out, and this is coming in. See, there's a minus sign and a plus sign. And these are, if you know Git, you'll know patches. And these interdiffs are basically the description of differences between patches. So if you've made a patch and somebody else has made a patch already, you need to define the interdiff between them. So that's all covered in the patch contribution guide. There'll be instructions on how to do that. But that's what those files are. Then there's the issue forks, which is the new stuff. Basically, if you create an issue fork, it creates a separate fork of the whole project, which is yours to work on. And then when you've made your changes, you do a merge request and it pulls it back in. But we're not going to cover that for first time workshop. So there's been a lot of comments on here, and normally the best thing to do is, apart from looking at the number of comments, is to go and look at the bottom and see what was the last comment. It's always good. So 76 patches green, so review is appreciated. In this case, this is just about, if we look at the top, we'll see it needs review. It's just about going and checking that the described changes or the described issue is no longer there with the latest patch. And we'll talk about how to test patches in a bit. But that's one of the things that you'll be doing in the issue queue is, testing patches. One that is minor and actually needs work. So this is one where it's replacing the word Drupal in the user interface across the whole thing to avoid distribution issues. And again, it's been described. This one actually, I think it's going to break out into a ton of different issues. They're all very small. We've tried to tag a little banner on them just to say that these are novice issues. And here there's a description of we have to fix a list of child issues, and there's a suggestion of how to. So if you read here, novice task, find a module in the group, blah, blah, fill in the issue fields. So this one actually defines creating a separate issue. So this issue itself, you would go into this and create an issue, and that would be a contribution itself, is to create a specific issue for this patch that needs to be done on all these different areas. Then afterwards, if you want to, you can work on it, but just creating the issue itself. Okay. So yeah, that is the issue queue in a nutshell. And we'll be going over a bit more detail about that when later on, and also when people start working on the issue queue, it's a lot easier to understand when you start clicking and reading through something than when I'm skimming through it really fast. This is the area, development tools is the area where you're going to find out about what tools you would want to or need to use to do contribution on a code level or when you're doing patches and things like that. There is a section, drupal.org/tools, and that will cover all of the documentation that you need, but I'm going to talk through it. So what tools do you actually need? For a local Drupal environment, which if you want to fix code, if you want to write code on your machine, you're going to really want to have a local environment. There's choices. So if you've never installed any platform before, if you don't have your own working environment on your system, or for some reason, if your working environment is very structured and specifically set up for a different version, Drupal 7 or something like that, and you don't want to interfere with it at all, you can use the quick sprint. There's a link in the /tools webpage to the quick sprint, and that basically is implemented with Docker and DDEV to load up a very easy to install version of MySQL and PHP and everything that you need to run Drupal 9. And there's some time taken to download these things. So at some point when you look at the tools and you go into quick sprint, if you're going to use that, go in and read the documentation and start the downloads, and then you can look at the issue queue while it's downloading. There will be some time taken. If you have a development environment and you are fine with that, then you can just go to project/Drupal and choose the right version. In this case, the issues that we're looking at will be on 9.2.x, I believe, and just get the latest development version, which, yeah, git clone branch 9.2.x. There's the Git repo. Sorry, you will need Git if you're pulling the code down. Git and something else, and I've forgotten what. Oh yes, Git and Docker are actually available in the quick sprint tools as the third-party downloads. So there's two sections in the quick sprints. There's the quick sprint itself and the third-party downloads. So if you need Docker and or Git and you don't want to figure them out on yourself, then they'll be in the third-party tools. Otherwise, there's a link there, git.scm.com, and that's where you would use Git, where you install Git to do your version control. And then you just need some sort of IDE, that's a development environment. So VS Code, Sublime, Notepad, even anything that allows you to edit text. So I have a quick video about the installation of Quick Sprint. I might load that up now if I can find the right section. Sorry, it's too many things open right now. Okay, so I have a tools install video, and I can run through this and I can speed up certain bits, so it's not going to take forever. So we're going to Drupal.org/tools. And there we are in the tools documentation, and it'll talk about all sorts of stuff that you need to know about for using the tools. But we're looking for the using local development environment and install environment with Quick Sprint at an in-person event. Unfortunately, we're not really in person, but yeah. So there's a link there, and that will go to a GitHub page. And you can read all of that. There's some system requirements, and that's where it talks about the Drupal Sprint package, which is where the Quick Sprint is, and the Quick Sprint third-party installs where Docker and Git are. So you would go to get the latest one, which is 1.5.1. And that has the latest support for latest stables of Composer and PHP, DDEV. So DDEV is, so Docker is a container system that basically allows you to run all these sort of virtualized instances on your machine, and DDEV is a Drupal development environment that lives on Docker. So while that is downloading, you can read through the rest of the text, the requirements for Docker. Docker does need a bit of RAM. So if you've only got like 2 there. So my video feed suddenly went away. That's strange. Is it back? Yes. So yes, so right, as I was saying, the Docker environment itself does use a lot of resources. So bear that in mind. If you're on a low-powered machine, there might be other solutions available, and you can ask one of the mentors and they'll help you out. So here I'm just expanding the Sprint package, and that's the Sprint package expanded. And within that, there's an install.sh. And you'll see the install contribution tools instructions down the bottom. And they'll talk about loading up the right install script. So I'm just going to the command line. Here I'm doing it from the downloads directory, but I would probably recommend moving the Sprint package into somewhere else on your machine. It doesn't really matter if you're just going to get rid of it afterwards, but if you want to keep using it, yeah, it's probably better to put it somewhere a bit more permanent. So here you can see that it's installing different elements. It's installing Docker images. I'd like to point out I have Docker running already, so it didn't need to worry about that. But if you didn't have Docker running, I think it would warn you first. sorry. So at this point, I'm going to, it's probably like 10 minutes or a bit less. And it's been, okay. So it's downloading a ton of different install data that it needs to actually set up the environment. So beyond what you download, which is fairly quick, it's this kind of setting up that takes a while. So now it's got these instructions. So this is what you have to do to set up the package, which is run cert. This is what happens on OS X on Apple, but on Windows or Linux, it might be slightly different. So then they ask to go into that directory and then to run that script. And this might take a moment, so I'll just fast forward. Yep. So here it's extracting stuff, downloading more stuff. Downloading is the theme of the day. When we were at physical conferences, we actually hand out USB keys with all of this on it, because otherwise, especially on the concert, on the convention hall Wi-Fi, it can get a bit hairy. Obviously, everybody at home hopefully has a connection to. Okay, so this is taking a while. Yeah, it takes a while to build this bit. So I'm now going on to the last video of the series. Next time I should stick them together, shouldn't I? Okay. And it's still running git fetch. Okay, so now it's actually pulling down Drupal. And once it's finished with that, it's running Composer, tidying things up, setting up Drush. And that's it, I believe. Oh no, sorry, it's starting Drupal installation. Okay, that's it now. So once it's done that, you have, I'm going to pause for a sec. You have a website that you can visit on your browser in both HTTP and HTTPS, and you have a username and password for that. You have a mail system, a MySQL, so you can check that with PHP MyAdmin. And there's this information about chatting. So I'm going to grab that URL and paste it into the browser. And crossing my fingers, even though I know it works. I've got to say, if you already have a development environment and you want to run this quick sprint, shut down the development environment that you have, if possible, so that you don't end up with port conflicts and things like that. You might end up with, like, if you've got what's it called, a MAMP Pro or something like that running, or LAMP or whatever, it might be using a port that this is trying to use. I believe it tries to find a new port, but still, it's probably better if you shut down your existing environment if you have one. But yeah, here is your nice empty Drupal environment where you can test out patches on. And I'm just going into reports to check and see what it's saying. And yep, Drupal 9.2.0 dev. So that is how you install QuickSprint. So I'm going to go back to my presentation now. Do with those environments in a bit, but that's one of the tools that you can use. So that's having the development environment on your own machine. One of the other options is if you want to just test a patch and check and see that that patch fixes something. Say, for example, there's a problem where the menu breaks at a certain width, and there's a patch for that, and you're testing to see whether or not that patch has worked, and the issue is in needs review. you can go to simplytest.me, and load up the Drupal environment with any given module that you want and any patch that you want, and use that as your sandbox, basically. The only issue right now might be that there was a core issue on SimplyTest a couple of days ago, and I'm not sure if it's been fully resolved. But I do have I believe I have a video of SimplyTest. So yeah, so if SimplyTest isn't working, at least I can show you what SimplyTest would be doing when you use it, so that you can, if it's fixed tomorrow, you can use it. It's very, very handy. And yeah, if people want to contribute to working on fixing issues in SimplyTest, that's another contribution task there. So I'm going to switch to a video share again. Okay, so this will look mostly like it does right now. I don't think anything has visually changed since I recorded this. Just the version of Drupal might be different. Right, so go into core. And in this case, I believe I was using 8.9. Yes. So you just click on Sandbox, launch Sandbox, and it will spin up a version of Drupal on the browser. It uses Tugboat behind the scenes to create on the fly. I'm going to fast forward. Sometimes it can take a while if there's a lot of people using it. This is building a preview, loading dependencies. Okay. So there we go. It loads up this instance of Drupal, which is yours, for a given amount of time. I believe, I cannot remember how long it is. I think it's like 30 minutes, or maybe no, longer. I can't remember. And the password for that is always admin. Sorry, username admin, password admin. And so that is another way. You basically, here, where there's an add patch button, you take the file from any of the patches that's in an issue queue and you paste it into there with the right version of core, and it will patch core with that with that patch, and then load the instance up with that. So you basically end up with the patched version of Drupal to the issue that you're looking at. So then it's very easy to check and see if something's working or not. If it's a visual element or if it's a behavioral element you're clicking through, and you just need to set it up in the same way that the issue describes and test it. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Right, so that was SimplyTest.me. Making a patch is something that I mentioned before, in that, when you are using the issue queue and you're actually making a fix for an issue, you need to push up a patch or you need to do a fork. And as I said, we're not going to go into forking right now. So patching it is. And creating a patch can seem intimidating, but it really isn't that big of a deal. There's just a nice series of steps that you follow, and as long as you follow those steps, it's very straightforward. I'm going to load up a URL that is in the contribution guide, which is this one here. And basically, if you go to drupal.patch.create, I believe it redirects to this. Yeah. So, sorry, I'm going to share my screen. Okie dokie. So I'm losing track of where my tabs are. Okay, stop. An environment, and you know what the thing is that you're going to change. You need to create a patch for it. And there's actually a really great video, Drupalize Me video, which will go over that. So you can watch that, feel free. And here there's some documentation about patching. And the first thing that you want to do when you're actually going to create a patch is you need to have your local environment set up. So Git is what we use to do all of the patch creation. And the first thing you're going to want to do is to check out a version of, you're going to check out a version of core that is in the right version for the issue. So say it's an issue that's marked with 9.2.x, you're going to load up core 9.2.x, and then you're going to create a Git branch from that. Obviously, for those of you who are not going to be doing coding, I'm going to get back to some other stuff in a moment, but this is for those who will be creating patches. So you check out a patch with the specific issue number that's in the URL and the description, and then you go through these steps. Basically, it's very, very straightforward. So you make your changes, then you commit your changes, and then you use Git to create a patch file. So you would actually go back to the, you would do a diff between the base version, so 9.2.x, for example, and the current version, and it outputs it as a patch file. Then that patch file ends up looking like the patch file that I showed you earlier on in the issue queue. Here's a guideline of patches. So this just talks about naming conventions and things like that. So it's kind of good to bear in mind how to name the patches. One of the things you want to make sure of in the patch is that you're actually using the right. Sorry, I've just realized you can't see my other tabs. Yeah, so basically in the patch guidelines, it would tell you about some ideas of how to word or how to name the patch file. And these are conventions that are very useful for when you're actually downloading patches, for example. If, say, you are a developer who needs to patch something, you pull down the patch, and if it's got a really weird name, it's confusing. If it's, Drupal dash 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dash 3 dash fix to solve my problem.txt, it's a lot more obvious than just a set of numbers. So the guidelines are really important to try and follow. So there's a bit more documentation here about composer-based core dependencies, but you don't really need to worry about that just yet. Probably won't be dealing with that. The same with these patches. So it's mostly about patching, about this patch creation, and then uploading that patch to the issue. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. Yeah, so contribution events. This is what we're here for, and this is what all of this is leading up to. In a contribution event, the idea is that you're not coming along to sit down on your own in the corner and do the same thing you do at home. Obviously, we are at home, so we have to kind of imagine that we're all together. But the idea is this, is that you find, normally we'd work together in groups. So if everyone's sitting at different tables, maybe it's like, oh, hey, do you want to just work together? Or if there's a specific interest. So, oh, I'm interested in documentation. Oh, I'm interested in code fixes. I'm interested in specific code fixes to JavaScript stuff. Okay. So finding an issue together, so that's in the issue queue, or identifying some documentation that needs fixing, or even training materials or something like that. Discussing and establishing consensus on what to do. So if it's there's a bug, identifying who's going to do the test on the original issue, who's going to do screenshots, who's going to write the fix, who's going to upload it with everyone's name on the issue in the issue queue. And that's the sort of thing that the mentors will be talking to you about, and they'll be saying like, okay, where are you at? Okay, this is the next thing you want to do. So they'll guide you through all of these processes. It's not like you have to memorize anything, but this is the idea of what will be happening. So you've got all of these different things you might be working on. This working on an issue, writing a patch, tests, reviewing things. But the idea is that you're not working on your own. You're not just trying to struggle to understand something and then sitting around waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. But instead, we are trying to get everyone to work together and delegate in a group. Like, oh, okay, I'll do this. Oh, you help me with this. And then it's a lot easier to do things together than on your own. So for that, we really do need to have a good channels of communication. And I would encourage everybody to get onto Slack and get onto the contribute channel on Drupal Slack. So there's the links for Slack. And if you have any problems getting connected, you can always chat on here on the portal and ask people. You can go to, I believe the mentor booth is being manned. Actually, I'm not sure about that, but definitely the contribution lounge is being manned, and there'll be people on there. If you connect, you can ask if you're having trouble connecting to Slack. But on Contribute is where we'll be organizing a lot of the contribution efforts today. Then within the breakout rooms on the contribution lounge, there'll be different breakout rooms for different contributions. So there'll be mental contribution, there'll be specific topics, so core initiative contributions and things like that. So the idea would be that everybody goes to the contribution lounge and finds a breakout room where they can work with others, or talk on the contribute channel and say, hey, I'm here looking to contribute as a mentored, as a first-time contributor, where can I go? And it's obviously harder than if everyone's in the room and you can put your hand up and we'll run over. So please do make yourself known. But yes, that's where we can guide you towards which kind of contribution you want to do and where to do it. So also, if you're looking to do documentation, as I mentioned before, you might not need tools, but you might need to know where to go to do contribution, or if somebody has some guidelines as to what stuff needs to get done. So again, there's actually often a documentation table where people will be coordinating efforts as to what documentation needs to get done. There's another link here, which is contribution resources. That's bit.ly/contribution-resources. And that, I think, is a link that probably points to some of the same stuff I've already shown you. But it's always good to have these links. I believe most of the links are available on the booth. So if you go to the mentor booth, you'll find most of these links. And then one last thing about the contribution is it's an ongoing thing, right? It's not just for today. It's not just for events in general. It's, if you can, a monthly thing, or bi-monthly thing, or a weekly thing if you have the time. Even if it's just half an hour every week or something like that, just going in and saying, oh, I'll take a look at an issue, or oh, maybe you've got an issue ongoing that other people are helping out with, and you just check in every now and then and see how it's going. Or you spend half of your day working on contribution, which is great. But there is core mentoring hours, which are on the Contribute channel, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, I think, on Wednesdays. That possibly might have changed. I'd have to double check on that. But if you go into the Contribute channel and you say, I'm looking to contribute, when are the core mentoring hours, somebody will point you in the right direction. I think there's still an IRC channel, but I have not been on it. But yeah, there's also other contribution days like this in Drupal camps, DrupalCons, Contrib days. I think there's specific days that are just for Contrib. Yes, the global contribution days held every January. So yeah, that's it for a brief overview of contribution. And now would probably be a good time to look at the discussion chat and find out what is going on. I've just seen there's people messaging. So is there actually any... Sorry, I'm looking at... There's 2 times of chat, so I'm trying to figure out what the chat is. Okay. Hi, Annika.
How's it going?
Annika is another mentor, and yeah, she's also in the UK. So I didn't even present myself. So I'm Chris, by the way. Sorry, I always forget to say anything about myself. I'm Chris. I'm a Drupal developer, and I've been doing mentoring for a while. And yeah, if you need to find me specifically, I believe I'm on Slack as Chris Darke, that's D-A-R-K-E. But everything I've said would probably be said better by somebody else on the Contribute channel. So, and also there's a video on the mentor booth, which I did, which is most of the stuff I just talked about. But yes, I would like to see if there's any questions from everybody.
Seems like quite a relevant one. Where is the mentors booth?
Yes, where is the mentors booth? So if you go to the main portal, I know that right now we are kind of in this Aircast studio. I don't know. Everybody else are they in the main portal? I guess so. If you go to the home, and then on the right-hand side, there's a section which says booths or something. I think it says, exhibition now, exhibition hall, something like that, exhibition booths. I can't see it right now because I'm in the wrong area and I don't think I can load it on a different page. But exhibition booth or exhibition hall, if you go there, at the bottom is, there's various different company logos, and at the bottom is one that says mentor and or mentoring, and it's a green circle, green Drupal icon. And if you click on that, there's various videos in there, including the first time workshop video, which I made for DrupalCon Global. So it's possibly a tiny bit out of date. I tried to update it a little bit to mention forking, but just to acknowledge that it exists. So thank you, Peter. Thank you, Juan. It's really good to hear that. So yeah, the idea is that everybody gets set up in the right way for what they want to do. So if anybody doesn't know what they want to do, they're welcome to actually come and join here, and if they don't feel shy about it, ask a question live. And I believe, is that still the case? Yes, people can come on. Yeah, they can come into the green room, right, Frank? Yes. So if you want to come and you can on stage, you can raise your hand and you can come and ask a question, or you can come and have some sort of discussion about some topic about contribution, and we can hopefully clear that up. And if not, if you don't have any issues and you know exactly what you want to do and you know how you want to do it, you want to set up tools, okay, great, you're going to go look at the tools section and download whatever you need, then I would encourage you, just go ahead and do that and go to the contribution lounge and get onto the contribute channel. Then speak up. Just say, hey, I'm here. What do I do next? Or I've got my tools set up. Where do I go to? It's very hard for us to kind of guess where people are at. Sometimes I'll be going around the table and I'll see people very busy, and I'll say to them, are you okay? No, I'm kind of stuck on this thing. Oh, okay. So yeah, if you don't raise your hand, I'm not going to know about it. But yeah, do let me know if you need something. And this session carries on for another hour. So if there's anybody that has not yet seen it, or they've joined late and they're particularly interested in seeing me talking about it live again, or maybe they want to see Annika do it off the cuff without having any preparation for it.
This is my first time too.
Then please feel free again to say, oh, hey, I missed most of that. And we do have another hour slot on here. Normally we do run it twice. I would only ask that I go and get some water before I start again. But that's about it. So
there's a question from Christian on here.
Oh yes.
How do you actually claim an issue? Is assigning to oneself enough if you're not as fast as other people?
Oh, sorry. I do. Yeah. I did. I don't know if I guess I didn't mention that. Don't assign issues to yourself if they're core. So even if you go into the issue queue and you see a core issue and you go, okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm forgetting all these things that people say. And one of the things that the mentors will tell you when you go to start working on something is the first step when you've got your table of people set up and you're going to work on an issue is to go into the issue itself and write, hi, my name is Christian, I think it was. I'm here at DrupalCon Europe 2020, and I'm going to be working on this issue. Oh, and then everybody else on your table can also write the same thing. Then you're not claiming it, because we tried to encourage people don't, assign issues to themselves in core. But you're basically saying, I'm here, I'm working on it, and other people elsewhere they'll know not to start working on an issue that has been worked on by first-time contributors. So by going in and saying, I'm working on this, you're kind of saying, we're working on it right now, so don't worry, move along to another ticket. Also, when you have any updates for the issue, so say, for example, you're doing testing or whatever, you can say, I'm currently doing testing for this issue. And then once you've done testing, you can say, we've done the testing, and get everybody who's involved in the testing or whatever to comment on the issue. The reason for that is that there's a thing called issue credits. So if you're working on an issue, you get credits for working on it. It's a little bit of a gamification, I guess, of the system, but it's also, it's good. It gives other people a number that, it's like, oh yeah, this person's, got lots of issue credits. They've been working on a lot of stuff. It's good. So make sure everybody involved with that contribution is actually physically, on the issue. But yes, good question. And sorry, I forgot to mention that about the assignment.
There's another question here from Maurice. Is contributing mainly focused on the core? On Slack, I mainly found topics around the core.
So for contribution days, especially for first-time contribution, we talk about core mostly because it's less fluctuating than contrib modules. There might be a lot of people who've got a vested interest in working on specific contrib modules. There's modules that are sponsored by different companies and things like that. And there may be issues that they're working on all the time that, might have specific plans. Or maybe there's a module that's not even, maybe they're not planning on continuing it or something like that. It's a lot easier to keep a stable example of working on an issue on core, because there's a bit more of a how should I put it? It's a bit more in control versus some of the contrib stuff. It can come and go. And but feel free, if you do see a contrib issue that you want to work on, feel free. But we're not going to make examples out of contrib issues. So that's why we kind of talk about core. The novice issue queue is also only really, at least for the DrupalCon events, we only really triage core issues. So if you find an issue elsewhere and you determine that it is doable, by all means, work on it. But if you're looking around trying to find an issue and you're struggling, if you go to the tags, if you go to core and you search for tags novice and Europe 2020, you'll find issues that we've specifically curated to be easier to do for first-time contributors. So that's why. Otherwise, it would be there's so many other pieces of code out there that it would be very hard to focus.
Another question from Maurice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Can a mentor help on issues? Sorry, 1 second. Scrolling up. With an abandoned project.
Can mentors help with issues on an abandoned project? Is that the question?
That's the question.
Yes. So an abandoned project needs a new home. It needs somebody to take it in from the rain and feed it and delouse it and whatever. And that's not always easy. Sometimes you need to actually ask. So there's a process to it. You can't, if the issue if the issue's not core, again, it's contrib and it's been abandoned, you can make an issue on it, but you can't get that issue applied unless you're one of the maintainers. So you could patch all you want, but unless the maintainer applies that code to the code base, it's not going to happen. So if it's been abandoned, there's two approaches to that. Either you talk to the maintainer and the maintainer goes, oh, hey, yeah, I can't be bothered anymore, I'm too busy. Sure, I can make you maintainer. Or if you email them, and I think if you contact them and a certain amount of time goes by and somebody can confirm this, I can't remember how much time, then you can apply to take over the module. So you can apply to be a maintainer for an abandoned module where the original maintainers have disappeared. And then you can do whatever you want with it, effectively. I have had issues where, for example, Elasticsearch for Drupal 7, they never made a version for Elasticsearch 6, and I kind of considered trying to get onto the maintainers for that so that I could push up the Elasticsearch 6 version. That's probably the best thing if you know that you've got a very specific use case where most people aren't going to be bothered about it, because otherwise it's their time involved in reviewing everything and blah, blah, blah. But sometimes what happens as well is that you end up taking a copy of that module and creating your own module that you just copy the code and rename it, and you can have your own module that you can work on, and then you can push that up to Drupal. So that's like the third kind of like hacky way, is that you just kind of take normally you would put a comment and you'd be like, this is a copy of this module, but I'm totally changed it or whatever.
Cool. There's another one here from Daniel. If we have another hour, can you please talk about issue fork process? If it makes sense, of course, in the first workshop.
For the issue fork process, right?
Yes.
So I have to admit, I've not actually done an issue fork. I mean, I've not done one myself. I can talk about it, and I can talk about the guidelines to it. So yeah, so there's actually a video that is up here, so I'm going to load that. Okay, so I will show this. So basically, when you do an issue fork, as I said before, you're taking a fork of the whole project. So in the case of Core, you're taking a whole fork of Drupal, and you're making changes to that, and then you ask for that whole copy to be merged back in. So you're making a merge request back in. So you can have a whole extra instance, and you can do a ton of different changes here and there and that, and then afterwards you can work it back in. Yes, there's a link there that Annika posted, which is, I believe, where this video that I'm going to show starts from. But here's a video, so I'm going to start sharing this other screen. Demo. I have no idea I can't remember if this actually has audio. If it does, okay. So, right, so opening a core issue. It's nice that this one's been sped up. So they've created an issue, and then you get that button that I pointed out for the issue forking. It normally comes up with a fairly sensible name, but if you want to change the name, you can change it. Then when you've clicked on that, it'll give you Git commands to actually pull down the fork. So you're actually adding a GitLab repository endpoint where you can pull down the fork, or you can go to GitLab itself. And yes, in GitLab, you can actually make changes in the code on the fly. So it is great for making changes without having to pull down an environment. But for now, we've decided not to go over doing forking, just to not have too many different things going on. But yes, that is the ideal workflow for a quick change going forwards, because then you make this merge request, you ask it which environments to test it on, and it runs a test. So yeah, you can see the merge request gets tested. They write an RTBC, they get a merge button, and they can press merge. There has to be an approval process for that, the same as there is for the patches. The thing is, there's still a lot of work that goes on with patches. There's a ton of patches out there. So for a lot of the stuff that first-time contribution is involved in, it's looking at patches and applying patches and testing them and things like that. So the merge request process is great in that the merge request process is great in that it really does streamline the workflow, and you can make a lot of different changes and see those changes in Git and not have to worry about trying to interpret like, oh, is my patch file okay? No, it's just there. But there's a lot of historical stuff in patch files that still needs to get dealt with. And so for now, yes, if you want to do a merge request and you've gone through the steps, take a look at it. No one's going to say no to contribution. It's all great. But don't think like, oh, merge requests take priority over patches or anything. So yeah, yes, the workflow is very handy indeed. You obviously, if you're making actual development changes, you would need to put it down into an environment and test it out. But just if you know if it's just a README change, like in the video, yes, it can be a lot easier.
So you appear to have gone dark. That's not a pun. Oh, there you are again. There you are.
Was that a comment from somebody, or was that from you?
That was from me.
Oh, okay. So any more questions? It would appear not. No. I'm trying to think. There's some other stuff I probably haven't talked about. Sorry, I'm just trying to. How do I close this thing? Okay. Yeah. So again, to repeat myself, go to the contribute channel on Slack. Don't go to the mentoring channel. That's one thing. Mentoring channel is for mentors, not to get mentoring. If you go there, you'll see like a comment that says this is for mentors only, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you're not going to be shouted at, but if you go in there asking questions, you might not get answers because people are busy elsewhere. Because it's just for mentors to coordinate things. So contribute is the channel to be at. There's also the lounge breakout rooms, and I don't know if there's anybody in the sort of main area. There might be. I think there is meant to be somebody in the main area. So when you go onto the contribution lounge, there'll be somebody there you can talk to before you choose a breakout room. But again, we're all friendly people. We're all just like you guys. You know, we are you guys. Don't feel worried about asking things. Like, you know, the first time I did mentoring, and I'd go around totally clueless. I had no idea what was going on. I just asked lots of questions. Everyone's happy to answer. The people who are not happy to answer maybe are in a room somewhere doing some work, so they won't be there. So anybody that you see will be happy to help. One of the other things is when we do this event physically, there's different sort of tiers of tables. So you've got the first time workshop and the first, you know, the mentor contribution, and then you have core contributions and contribution initiatives and other tables. So that means that you've got experts in various different areas quite close to you. So if you're working on an issue and it's like a UI issue, maybe it's a menu issue, and the people from the JavaScript decoupled menu initiative are just across the hall. And if you've got a problem with something and you need to ask a question, you can go over and ask them. So oftentimes what would happen is somebody would ask me and I would say, you know, come here, and I would take them over to one of the experts and they would get some information that way. So don't feel afraid to ask, oh, hey, I need some information about this. But also, we often don't know the answers, so we'll have to go and ask somebody else. So if you see there's various different channels on Slack, so there's a accessibility channel, for example. There's accessibility, there's documentation. Documentation is a big one. Obviously, if you're doing documentation, tons of stuff in there. They're very well documented, strangely enough. Multilingual, all sorts of different channels. So if you're having an issue with a specific area, say with some multilingual feature, you could go into the multilingual channel and ask there, and there's probably going to be experts in the multilingual channel who can help you out. So yes, again, don't feel afraid to ask.